Listen to the Vibes, hosted by Coyote Night. Listen in for some positivity and good times. The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes broadcast network. Listener discretion is advised.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I have here Brenden from MasterTalk, and we're going to learn a little bit about him first, and then we're going to learn about what he does. So, Brenden, tell us about you.
Of course, Kyle. Thanks for having me on. Great to be here. So yeah, my name's Brenden. I'm the founder of MasterTalk. It's a YouTube channel I started to help the world master the art of communication and public speaking. And how I got started was when I was in university. I used to do these things called case competitions. So think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So while other guys my age, would watch like college football or rugby or soccer or play those sports. As you probably tell, I didn't do either of those things. But I would watch other schools present. And that was my life for 3 years. So I was still eating the same chicken wings as the other guys in my class. But I was watching and critiquing different presentations, and we would compete against other schools from around the world. So in the United States, schools like Georgetown, the University of Florida, the Wharton School of Business in Pennsylvania. There's just a bunch of these schools who present to each other and to executives of companies. So after I graduated, I'd presented like 500 times, coached a bunch of people. And then I just asked myself what I could do to make a difference, like what you're doing with this podcast. So I started making videos in my mother's basement. One thing led to another, and I have a bit more success now with MasterTalk.
Oh, nice. So how many subscribers do you have, if you don't mind me asking?
Of course, no worries. I think I'm like around 3,000 now.
Wow.
Something like that.
Okay, I need your help.
Always happy to serve, man.
You're a pretty young guy then.
You got it. Yeah, so I started MasterTalk when I was 22. I'm 24 now.
Wow. My daughter's older than you.
I'll take that as a compliment. I think that's where the first lesson comes, is never let your age define your outcomes. So like for me, like I started the channel at 22. I started coaching C-level executives when I was 23. So you can imagine how much insecurity I had when I started. I was like, wow, like, I was coaching people your age, essentially, like 40, right? 45.
I wish.
Don't worry. They don't need to know. But yeah, exactly. So I started coaching people your age, and I was just like, why are they listening to me? But I think the idea of being an expert just means being one chapter ahead of everyone else. If you know a bit more than the next person, you're eligible to help them out a bit.
Yeah, well, age shouldn't really matter. It's what you know. And just talking to you right now, it seems like you're very knowledgeable. I mean, so how do you get people started?
Of course, with public speaking. So I think the first step, Kyle, is to understand where the fear of public speaking comes from. Because whether in New Zealand, Japan, US, Mexico, wherever you want to be, we're all scared of public speaking. We don't really understand why. So let's start by clarifying that. So the question on our mind is, where do we give most of our presentations? Because that's where the answer probably lies. And for most of us, whether you're a high school dropout or a PhD, is school. We're in high school together. Teacher comes up to us and says, Kyle, I need you to do a presentation on the Renaissance. And you're sitting there like, what is this, like a fruit? And then you find out later that it's a time period in history and got to present it. And 3 things happen in that situation. 1, we never get to pick the topic, and it's generally something we're not passionate about. 2, students don't care to listen to us, not because they don't like us, but because they also have to present 10 minutes later. So their head is not in this conversation. It's in their own presentation that they're about to give right after you. And number 3, teachers are stressed. They're very well educated, very competent, but they have 40 students to go through in 2 classes. They can't sit you down for 10 minutes and go, hey, Kyle, let's go over your presentation. So if all of these 3 things happen over and over again in English, math, sciences, languages, on and on, we're taught to believe that public speaking is a chore. It's something that sucks. It's an obligation rather than an opportunity to make a difference, like what we're doing with this show.
Oh, exactly. If you have that passion, it seems easier to talk about. If I'm in a setting where we're talking about music or whatever that I really enjoy, conversation goes really well. But like you said, if you want to talk about the Renaissance or something like that, I'm going.
Same here, man. I give the example. I still don't even know what that is.
And you sound so enthusiastic when you talk, so that's a big plus. So, all right. So we've figured out what we're passionate about, and now we go to the next step. What's the next step?
Right. So after that, now that we understand what the fear, to kind of put a bow on that, the first step is understanding that the fear is not our fault. We're not actually scared of public speaking. The system that we grew up in taught us to fear public speaking. If we're at school, it's tied to a grade. If we're at work, it's tied to a result. And if we fail at any part of this conversation, whether it's school or work, we get punished for it. Whether it's a lower grade or whether it's saying, you know, Kyle, we had that promotion for you, but, you know, tough luck because your presentation skills aren't good enough. I'm sure that's not your case, but you know what I mean, right? So that's the first step. Second step, how do we fix that? Present something you're really passionate about, something you really care about, and do it hundreds of times. What the best speaking coaches don't tell you, or the best speakers in general, is that they only present one or two things. Yeah, sure. When I was on the first podcast, Kyle, I'm sitting there wondering, why is a stranger asking me questions, right? I don't understand. But after you've been on 150 shows, then you're like, okay, well, at some point, I'm going to get the same questions again. So it's much easier to answer them. So step 2 is to create a repeatable presentation. Find a problem you could solve for somebody else, present the presentation 50 to 100 times, and you'll be way better as a speaker. And for you, let's say there's a coaching workshop, what I would suggest you do is you make a presentation on your podcast, what the mission of the podcast is, and that's something you can repeat in perpetuity, like forever.
Well, that's easy. It's just a free for all. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
Fair enough. But
it makes it easier.
But there's somebody who's watching you, right? There's like some sort of, whether it's your friends or your family. So, you know, you can talk about what surprising insight they got from the Free for All podcast, you know?
So, all right. So now we've gone on to that step. You know, and I'm going to give everything away in one session here, but I mean, what do we do to further that?
Of course, no, I'm happy to give everything away. There's too much content on my YouTube channel. That's why we can't go over everything in an hour anyways, or 30 minutes, or however long this is. But the idea is, after that, what you want to do is what I call relentless feedback. So even with me, like I've probably presented like 900 times now as of today, but I still practice as if I was a beginner. So whenever I make a new keynote, I get feedback from 25 different people. Not 2 people, not 5 people, 25. So what I do is I record myself speak, and then I send it to those 25 people. But I don't say, Kyle, could you give me feedback? Because you're just going to say something general. You're going to say, oh, that was good or that wasn't good. What I ask you instead is I say, Kyle, give me time-stamped feedback. So what does that mean? That means when people watch the video and they see you make small mistakes, they point it out. So they would say something like, Brenden, go to 352. Why are you smiling here if you're talking about a tragedy that happened in your life? Brenden, go to 659. You sound boring. Can you go to 7? But if 25 people are doing that, you have a bunch of timestamps. You go through all of them. And you're like, man, I suck. But the second version of the presentation is like light years ahead of the first one.
Yeah. Well, you figure with that kind of feedback, you're improving yourself, but then you have to be that kind of person who's willing to take criticism, because some people can't take criticism very well. I mean,
absolutely.
Myself, tell me what I'm doing wrong. I want to make this experience a lot more pleasant, you know, and so, but we all make mistakes. And I think a lot of people like podcasting because they like how real it is. So, but that's basically the way your YouTube channel goes, is like podcasting.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I would definitely agree that in podcasts it's a lot more raw because you just go with the conversation. You know, my hair is all kind of wishy-washy. Obviously on the YouTube channel, I'm a lot more clean. I'm in like a nice setting. I got a nice suit on. But I think the idea is just, you're right. Like the more authentic you are in conversations, the easier it is to flow and for people to follow what you're doing.
Okay, so now you've got an old dog like me and you got to teach him a new trick. How are you going to go about doing that?
I think the way that because a lot of people ask me this, like, how did you get a bunch of CEOs to kind of like say yes to your coaching? You're like a kid. And I always answer with, don't never tell, just show, right? It's all about, it's back to show and tell, right? Don't just talk about your services, do the service. So whenever I pitch to CEOs, it's never like, hey, this is what I do. Here, check out my videos. That doesn't work. What I do instead is I watch one of their keynotes on YouTube. I point out the 50,000 mistakes that they make, because trust me, they make a bunch of them. And then I just send them an email. I say, here are the 73 mistakes you made. Good luck with this. And they always respond with, so how much do you charge? So I think one way that I do it with people, you just got to be upfront with the value. Like in my case, right, despite my age, I'm sure for people who are still a part of this conversation, you probably realize that I know a thing or two about public speaking. So you go, oh, maybe I can listen to this guy. Maybe this guy's valid. But if I was just talking about what I do, how I serve people, but I don't actually give any value, then you don't really know if I'm if I'm competent at what I do. So I would start with there. And then the next thing I would do is I tie incentives to public speaking. So for you, if I was coaching you right now, I would ask you the simple question. What's the big vision that you have for your life? Do you want to make this podcast a bit bigger than it was before? Do you have like a business that you want to grow? So what would that be in your case?
Well, for me, of course, I want my shows to grow an audience, but my main goal is just to help someone. Even if my audience was only 5 people, if I've touched at least one of those, or I have 5 people that listen to me on a regular basis, I feel like I've accomplished something. But, in the end results, of course, you want to be monetized and these kind of things. And on top of that, we're trying to grow a network. And so I want to bring more people in. I want them to be successful because that makes me successful. And I want to have the tools to do that. So the more I learn, then the more I can teach. So I don't care if you're 15. If you know more about what you're doing, teach me, sensei.
Right. And I appreciate that, Kyle. It's very nice of you. But so what I would say to convince you, right, not to like buy services, but to watch the videos at the very minimum for free, is simply the difference between helping 5 people and 5 million is public speaking. So for me, when I started coaching people, I wasn't coaching the CEO of anything, right? I was coaching the university students in my classrooms, in my competition programs. And gradually over time, a lot of people came up to me and just said, hey, like, you should probably make videos on this. I was like, why would I ever do that? I'm going to be a senior executive of a company. I have time to waste on YouTube. But they looked at me, especially one in particular, and said, well, do you think you have time to coach everyone in the world before you die? And I go, no. So I say, what is the only way to do that? And I said, video. Video is the only way. Podcasts are the only way. Blogs are the only way to scale your message to millions of people. So public speaking, especially today where less people read blogs or read anything these days, you need to get really good at public speaking if you want to impact thousands of people, which is what I'm trying to accomplish with the YouTube channel.
Yeah, I don't even like to read captioning on television. So when my daughter turns it on, turn that thing off. I hate seeing words come across it. But no, I've met people that's how they got started was doing blogging, and of course, with the videos and everything, you are able to reach more people. It seems like you can capture somebody's attention with that. I mean, you don't overproduce your stuff. You just sit down and you give a presentation, pretty much. Right. So, take me through one of your typical videos.
Yeah, for sure. So the process is very simple for me because I'm lucky that, I have that skill, and obviously it took a long time to get right. I sucked on camera when I started, but the process is fairly simple. I write out the script and I write one every day. I try to anyways. And then when it's time to film my videos for the year, I film like 25 videos in a day.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. I used to not do that just with COVID. It's expensive to take a taxi back and forth between where my editor lives and where I live. So we batch it all in a day. And I just one-shot the videos, or I separate them to several parts. So there's 5 parts to my videos. The intro, right, where I usually say a quote, and then I explain what the topic's going to be. Then I go into tip number 1, tip number 2, tip number 3, and then I close. So each video probably takes me 30 minutes to film on average, and then we take breaks in between and things like that. But I would say the most important video for people to check out is probably my 3 daily public speaking exercises. It's like a 4.5-minute video, and you can start implementing that tomorrow. And I'm happy to share one of those exercises today. It's called the random word exercise. So why don't you just give me a random word, Kyle?
A random word.
That's not like jargon, like anything that's that I can like understand.
Oh, so great googly moogly is out then.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Hockey stick.
Hockey stick's great. Okay, cool. So what I need to do with hockey stick is I need to create a presentation out of thin air. So here I go. It's ice cold as I walk into the arena. And I can see the audience cheering for the fans as the game is about to start. The hockey players start to enter the ring and the game begins. You know, a lot of people think, right, that hockey is about speed, that hockey is about getting the puck into the net, that hockey is about teamwork, and all those things are true. But the most important part of hockey is stick control. Hockey players spend years thinking about the equipment that they use, whether it's the mask, whether it's the gear, but more importantly, the hockey stick that they value so much in their lives. And that's exactly why today I'm going to be talking about the different hockey sticks that you can utilize to take your game to the next level. So notice I just imported that like out of complete thin air, right? So what you can do every day, take 5 random words, just literally light, wife that doesn't like me, teapot, things like that. And just do that 1 minute per word. Obviously, something I always like to say on shows, don't compare yourself to me. I've literally done the exercise over 1,000 times, right? Because I do it on every podcast I'm on. So I don't even want to practice, but I'm forced to. And even if you're in a public setting, you don't really need to even do the exercise if you're too shy to kind of speak it out when you're on the road. But you can just think of it mentally. Let's say you're on a road trip with your family and you look at a tree. You go, if I were to do the random word exercise right now, what would I say? So you could say, a tree is this, and then over time you'll start to say, what do trees mean? And then you got the exercise right. And then over time you'll get better.
Oh, that's kind of sweet. Kind of like when you watch Karate Kid and he tells them to, wax the floor like this and then wax the floor like this. And after you've done it enough, it's just second. I mean, you don't even have to think about it anymore. So
right. And here's a simple example. If I could present hockey stick, I don't even like sports. If I could present hockey stick, imagine me when I present communication, something I actually know something about, right? So that's the kind of the mental game. If you do the harder thing, when you go back to your own subject, it's not really a presentation anymore. It's more of a joke.
I never thought hockey stick could make or give me chills, but you did.
Thanks work. Don't worry, but you'll get there.
You're awesome. You're awesome. Man, I need something more like that. I want to, I don't know, take myself to that next level. I enjoy just talking with people, but I guess to make that presentation really kick, I need to practice that kind of thing. So yeah, thanks.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, I look handsome. I know how to speak.
It's true. All of these things are correct. I can't deny it.
I'm ready to get up in front of people. What's the next thing I need to kind of keep in mind when I'm walking up to the podium?
For sure. I would say for you specifically, the advice would be a bit more different since you have a podcast. Because podcasts are one of the easiest ways to get better at public speaking. I don't know a single podcaster, since I'm familiar with the space, that has recorded over 500 episodes and sucks at public speaking. I don't know a single one. I honestly don't. Every person I know who has recorded more than 500 episodes, whether it's Pat Flynn or any of the other big players in the space, are all exceptional communicators. So I think the only suggestion for you is to do 2 things. One is to keep this podcast going for as long as you possibly can. Once a week, 50 times a year practicing. 10 years, you're perfect. Right? If you do twice a week, number goes down. And second thing is to find spaces, whether it's other podcasts or whether it's a local community where you're living, where you can go out there. I believe you live in Texas, right? So a local community in Texas where you can go to a business association, a university, and speak for free and talk about the podcast, what you're trying to achieve with the podcast, even if it's a free-for-all. Maybe like some sort of like, I want to help people, whatever. And if you do both of those things with a random word exercise, I think your presentation skills will skyrocket in the next 6 months.
Oh, Okay, well now I've got everything I need. Talk to you later,
Yeah,
man.
you're good.
So do you ever find that there's that certain people that are like, oh, this guy's too young. How's he going to tell me what to do? I'm twice his age, or I'm 3 times his age, whatever, Do you run across that?
Absolutely. I think the idea, it's like every age, right? I think that's something I realized today. You'll always get criticized. If you're in your 20s, you're too young. If you're in your 30s, you should be focused on your family and paying off your mortgage. If you're in your 40s, you should focus on getting your kids into college. If you're in your 50s, you're too old for a podcast. If you're in your 60s, they'll say you need to retire.
So I'm too old for a podcast. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is regardless of how old you are, there are always people who are going to say you're full of crap, like you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. So I think my advice at the end of the day is never sell someone who doesn't want to be sold. So one mistake I made when I started was I had this delusion to think that university tenured professors would share my videos with their students, because why wouldn't they? They're not very good speakers and they don't have time to teach their students communication. So if they just share my videos for free, it's not like a sell or anything. They could all benefit from it, because I sure saw a bunch of students who struggled with it. And a lot of them sent me hate emails, right? They said, you're too young, even if they never took the time to even watch the video. And they criticized like 7 things that weren't even criticism. Anyways, long story. So I think the idea is sell the people who want to be sold. So podcasting is a good example, because usually podcast hosts are extremely open-minded because they're always looking for new guests, and they also see the value of communication since they're a podcast host. So that's why I've had the fortune of guesting on a lot of shows, because everyone sees the value in it and what I'm doing. So I think the key is pick niche markets where people are open arms and say, where have you been? Right, I've been waiting for what you have to share with the world. If you focus on those small communities and you become the queen or king of those communities, you'll grow like crazy.
So now you just need to convince my wife that I'm actually open-minded. But you could take what you're doing and not just apply it to public speaking, but almost life in general. So, have you considered maybe expanding that to do more of that kind of thing, or are you just focused on the public speaking?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So that's definitely the long-term goal. So if you think about, are you familiar with who Seth Godin is?
I'm sorry, say that name again.
Seth Godin.
No, I'm not.
Totally fine. When it's for caveat for the audience, because maybe most people don't know him. He has a top 10 blog in the world, very successful. He's like 19 best-selling books. He's like nuts, right? And the key to Seth that I really like is he really specialized in marketing. So he's probably one of the top marketing experts in the world. I'm like religious about his podcast. I've listened to every single one. But he uses the platform, the brand that he's built to talk about everything else. So for me, the first 5 years, because I'm around 2 years into MasterTalk now, so I expect to get that growth curve in the next 3 years. So then after 5 or so years of doing MasterTalk, I'm going to expand my brand to Master All, and then I'm going to start a podcast and talk about everything in life.
Okay, when you get ready to do the podcast, you come look for me, because I want you on my network. Well, I mean, you've proven that you know what you're talking about. You present yourself very well. You have a good speaking voice, and you have so much enthusiasm. And I mean, you just have that personality, and you're very respectful. So that those kind of things combined, that you should be successful. And so we've talked about those things. Now let's talk about your greatest failures.
Absolutely.
Because everybody needs to know that you can fail, but you can still improve and succeed. So,
Of course, we could spend a whole episode talking just about that, but I'm definitely happy to mention a few. So going back to the university professors thing, I probably wasted 6 months of my life sending 500 emails a day to every single. So I would spend like 3 hours a day sending these emails to a bunch of tenured professors to get nothing out of it. Like, slap on the wrist every single time, bunch of hate emails. So that's time I could have used to like pitch podcasts. That's time I could have used to create more content. That's time I could have used to just make my content better. So that was a huge waste of time and a really stupid mistake that I should have realized really early instead of waiting 6 months to get that right. That's probably mistake number one. Mistake number two, I would say, is I was in this Facebook group, right? And I was messaging people one-on-one, not to sell them, just to share the YouTube videos. And after I'd messaged like 60 people or so, the company who owned the Facebook group sent me a cease and desist letter. And I was just like, I can't afford lawyers. I started freaking out. And then I just replied with, hey, I'm just sending a YouTube video to people. And they just said, oh, okay, don't worry about it. I just went, so I was scared like crap. It was crazy. That's another mistake that was, or it's just scare that happened. It's more of a scare tactic, to be honest. But still, there's that. Jeez, what else? Making the mistake of sending emails to CEOs who wouldn't care. So like I knew really quickly I shouldn't waste my time with like the vice president of Bank of America, right? He won't care or she won't care because they already have like really expensive speech coaches. And I wasted a lot of time like speaking out to them, like giving them, like spending like hours. Like for each email I would send, I would spend like 45 minutes giving them like feedback. Like that was worth like $5,000, right? Because I would just nitpick a bunch of feedback points that no other speech coach catches, right? With timestamps. So I wasted a shit ton of time doing that. But obviously I realized later, okay, focus on purpose-driven people because they don't care how old you are. They only care what the outcome is because they just want to make a bigger impact. And if you're the bridge that gets them there, they don't care. They'll afford your services. They'll watch your videos. So those are a couple of the mistakes that come to mind.
Yeah, I think it's very important that, the people that I reach, that I'm trying to motivate them and inspire them and help them get to the next level. And that's why I bring people like you on. And, you can sit here and talk about the positive all day, but then in the back of their minds, they're like, but I do this wrong and I do this wrong. Well, they have to know, everybody starts out making mistakes. And here's a little bit of advice, not to make the same mistakes, but don't be afraid to make your own.
Right. And I'm happy to share my story really quick because I totally forgot to mention that. Like when I was 5 years old, my parents came up to me and they said, you need to go to French school. And I asked them why. And they said, well, you live in Montreal, Canada. So Montreal is a city up north in Canada where I live, where most people speak French, right? So you need to know French and English. So I studied my whole life in French. What does that mean? It means that not only was I uncomfortable with presentations for literally my life, but I had to present it in a language I didn't know. Right. So when I was in grade 7, grade 4, grade 2, I would stand up there and not be able to say anything. So you can imagine the anxiety I felt. So that's why I'm so passionate about this YouTube channel, is that if I could figure this thing out, I'm sure everyone on this call who have a lot more experience, who are presenting in a language they know, right, can figure out public speaking too.
True. I tell people I can speak French, but only in tongues.
Oh, that's
But I'm bummed. Hey, dad
once
jokes.
Again,
what can I say?
Note taken. That's pretty good, actually. I think that's my learning from you.
Hey, when you got kids and grandkids, you come up with corny jokes. What can I say?
That's true.
And plus, you have to be kind of clean. So. All right. So, if you want people to follow you or that you want them to check out your YouTube videos, how do they go about doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who want to check out the YouTube videos, it's MasterTalk in one word. And if you want to message me directly with any questions, concerns, complaints, insults, I'm open to anything. Feel free to send me a message on Instagram, and that's MasterYourTalk.
Sweet. Now, when I get ready to put the video out and all that good stuff, would you be willing to send me the links so I can just copy and paste them in the description?
Of course. I'm happy to send you that.
Sweet. Would you consider coming back at another time?
Of course. Don't be shy to message me.
Oh, sweet. Well, we're going to call it quits right here because I don't want to give away all your secrets at one time.
Trust me, there's enough secrets to go around. Don't worry.
I will definitely be checking out the videos myself because, I can always improve on what I do. I have no problem speaking in front of people, but that's taken years and years and years to get that kind of comfortable. I was supervisor for so many years, and when you're in front of people, you have to know how to speak, and there's safety stuff you have to talk about and all this kind of yada, yada, yada. But there's always room for improvement. I don't care how old you are. And don't be afraid to listen to the younger generation. Sometimes they actually know what they're talking about.
Sometimes,
not always, but sometimes.
Not always.
But anyway, I really appreciate you being here, Brenden, and I really would like for you to come back and I have enjoyed this very, very much.
Of course, Kyle. Thanks for having me. It was such a pleasure.
And for everyone that watches, I hope this has been informative, and give us some feedback and let us know what you think about Brenden here, and check him out on his YouTube and go to his website, all those good things. And tell him where he's screwed up today, like being on this show.
Absolutely. Oh, wait, no, wait.
There was your
Definitely not
reputation. But seriously, everybody, you know, and let us know. If we get enough feedback, we'll have you on real soon.
Absolutely, Kyle. Looking forward to it.
Well, thank everybody for joining us, and tune in again for the next one.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network and on Instagram at The Vibes Broadcast.